Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. If you're gunning for those top-tier CLPIP scores, aiming for that elusive CLB 9 or higher, you are in the exact right place. Consider this your secret weapon. We're going to unlock those top scores by mastering essential Canadian cultural vocabulary. We aren't just memorizing definitions today. We're bridging the gap between simply knowing English and actually sounding like a true Canadian local.
Here is our agenda for today, focusing entirely on Canadian context and culture.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1.
Provincial jurisdiction. Provincial jurisdiction. 省级管辖权. Now, you really want to pay attention to the collocation here. Things fall under provincial jurisdiction. This brilliantly illustrates the separation of government powers in Canada. When you're tackling writing task 2, say about healthcare funding, stating that it falls under provincial jurisdiction is a massive scoring opportunity. It shows the raters you don't just know words, you understand how Canada actually works.
Crown Corporation, 官官企业或国有企业. So what is this exactly? It's basically a state-owned enterprise, like Canada Post. If you get a Speaking Task 7 prompt about privatization, arguing that a service should operate as a Crown Corporation is just a fantastic move. It immediately proves to the examiner that your vocabulary is at an elite, native-like level.
Francophone, Anglophone, Francophone, Anglophone. 法语使用者与英语使用者. As you know, Canada is proudly a bilingual country, and these terms refer to French and English speakers. You absolutely must recognize these words to understand the linguistic divide. That's a concept that frequently pops up in the contrasting viewpoints of reading Part 4, especially in articles discussing Quebec demographics.
First Nations Indigenous Peoples. First Nations Indigenous Peoples. 第一民族原住民. Using this precise terminology when discussing rights and treaties or national reconciliation is so important. It prevents critical errors in tone during your writing and speaking tasks whenever Canadian history or social policies come up. It shows respect and cultural awareness.
Harsh winter climate. Harsh winter climate. 严酷的冬季气候. We aren't just talking about it being a bit chilly outside. You want to use the collocation to endure a harsh winter climate. This is absolute gold for Speaking Task 7, when you need to justify why a city should fund infrastructure repairs or maybe build more indoor community facilities.
Snow removal operations. Snow removal operations. Choose soatsagyu. Building right off our last term, this is the perfect terminology for municipal tax allocation surveys. In writing task 2, arguing to fund municipal snow removal operations instead of, say, an art park is incredibly practical and scores super highly for lexical resource.
Cottage country, 郊外别市区或度假胜地. Okay, this one is a fantastic conversational idiom that honestly traps a lot of listeners. In listening part 5, coworkers might casually discuss plans to head up to cottage country for a summer weekend. Knowing that this means rural vacation areas ensures you don't lose the thread of the conversation.
Civic holiday, 公民假日. Understanding this specific long weekend culture is key for workplace notices and general reading. A company might observe a civic holiday in early August, which impacts transit or office hours. You need to recognize it instantly as a regional public day off. Municipal bylaws. Municipal bylaws. 市政条例. You absolutely need to anchor this concept in your mind. For writing task 1, let's say your neighbor is playing music way too loud. Don't just say they are breaking the rules. State that you want the city to enforce local municipal bylaws. It sounds so much more authoritative.
Property tax assessment. Property tax assessment. 房产税评估. Citing local funding mechanisms proves you have a really advanced grasp of Canadian civic life. In a Writing Task 2 survey, you can suggest paying for civic improvements through these assessments, or you could even talk about the process to appeal a property tax assessment.
Community Recreation Center. Community Recreation Center. 社区康乐中心. These centers are essential neighborhood hubs offering everything from swimming to community classes. Arguing to build a new community recreation center is a staple, high-scoring response for those writing Task 2 surveys.
Cultural mosaic. Cultural mosaic. 文化马赛克，多元文化并存. Now, unlike the melting pot concept you might hear about in the US, Canada prides itself on being a cultural mosaic through its official multiculturalism policy. Use this in Speaking Task 7 when praising how immigrants contribute to the cultural mosaic of the city.
Bilingualism, 双语制. Understanding this federal mandate is crucial for comprehending government operations on the exam. An official state of bilingualism means federal services have to be provided in both English and French. This is a very frequent theme you will absolutely see in the dense passages of Reading Part 4.
Vast geographic expanse. Vast geographic expanse. 广阔的地理疆域. You're going to want to deploy this descriptive phrase when explaining why domestic travel or shipping takes so long here. Noting that services must span across a vast geographic expanse sounds incredibly professional in your speaking or writing tasks about transportation infrastructure.
Resource-based economy. Resource-based economy. 资源型经济. Canada relies heavily on natural resources, things like forestry, mining, and oil. Passages in Reading Part 4 frequently debate the macroeconomic transition from a resource-based economy toward green energy or the tech sector.
Hockey culture. Hockey culture. 冰球文化. Come on, we can't talk about Canada without this one, right? Mentioning how deeply ingrained hockey culture is at local community rinks gives your speaking test 2, personal experiences, or your task 7, opinions, a distinctly authentic Canadian flavor.
Commute via public transit. Commute via public transit. 通过公共交通通勤. When you find yourself debating urban sprawl in writing task 2, arguing that citizens rely on the ability to commute via public transit provides a structurally perfect and highly relevant argument. It's a very common exam theme.
Maple syrup production. Maple syrup production. 枫糖浆生产. Okay, this is fun. If speaking task 1 asks you to recommend a weekend activity or a gift to a friend, suggesting they learn about traditional methods of maple syrup production during the spring harvest is just so unique, specific, and memorable for the rater.
Wilderness conservation. Wilderness conservation. Wildness conservation. When you're asked whether a city should develop land for housing or protect its national parks, arguing that the government should prioritize wilderness conservation immediately anchors your writing task 2 essay in really high-level environmental vocabulary.
Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. 加拿大权利与自由宪章. This is the definitive, high-level legal term you absolutely must memorize. If a reading passage or speaking prompt touches on legal protections or equality, recognizing that these rights are enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms demonstrates absolute mastery of Canadian context.
Well, there you have it. Now that you've mastered these terms, here is a provocative test for you. How will you strategically combine the vocabulary we just learned to argue your side of this classic celpip dilemma? Will you argue that the harsh winter climate makes snow removal operations a safety necessity? Or maybe you'll say that a community recreation center is vital for maintaining our cultural mosaic. Take these terms, practice writing your response, and you will be well on your way to that CLB 9+. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep studying hard.